thanks very much for being here, for what I think is a very important discussion, and I'll try and give you some of my thoughts and views on the subject of Brexit, Irish unity, a prospect that is not only doable and realisable, but one that we firmly believe to be absolutely desirable and in fact necessary for the political, social and economic benefit of every soul and citizen that lives on this island, whether they're orange, whether they wear their bright orange plumage with pride, as our brothers and sisters are entitled to, or whether they are an emerald shade of green, or whether they fall somewhere in between on the vast multicoloured spectrum that now is Irish society, north and south. So later this morning, as all of you know, Theresa May will give us the benefit of her wisdom at a speech in Florence. And according to media reports and speculation, she's due to announce a €20 billion divorce in exchange for a deal that would see Britain remain in the single market and customs union, albeit for a transitionary phase. Now, what the final settlement will look like at this stage, I suppose, is anybody's guess still. But if Theresa May does, as anticipated, seek a deal that is of this nature, it is, I believe, further evidence that Britain is beginning at last to wake up to the import of the EU to the British economy and the shocking flaws and jeopardy in her government's drive for a hard Brexit. The notion that Britain could simply cut and run from the EU was always a pig in a poke. Britain's referendum on exiting the European Union was born of a deeply cynical, self-serving politics driven by a split at the heart of the Tory party. And I think their lack of cohesion and certainty and decision in terms of their post-Brexit positioning and strategy tells that story again. It's clear that the future of Ireland, north or south, it didn't figure at all in David Cameron's reckoning when he ploughed ahead with the Brexit referendum. That may astonish some that are loyal to the Crown and to the British system, but it is an inarguable reality. I think Brexit represents the most serious social, economic and political threat to the island of Ireland for a generation, but it also presents us with opportunities. Both the Irish and British government are co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement, an agreement that secures the rights of citizens right across Ireland. Yet Europe's role in the Good Friday Agreement seems not to have crossed the Tory leadership's mind. In the context of the current political crisis and the institutions being in abeyance, it would seem that the Good Friday Agreement seldom crosses their mind at all. Now, whatever your political hue, there is a collective and agreed position in Ireland that Good Friday is sacrosanct. And that is why the agreement itself must play a central role in the designated special status for the North within the European Union. We believe that that is the way forward. The agreement must be protected in all of its parts, and we have proposed that the Good Friday Agreement be incorporated as a protocol to the withdrawal agreement between Britain and the European Union. And very importantly, this would not only protect the human rights provisions of the agreement for citizens, it would ensure that the Assembly legislation, the actions of the executive, are in line with EU law and regulations. Now, I have been, as some of you may know, and Sinn Féin, a critic of the European project in many of its aspects for a long time, and I remain critical of it. That remains our position. But the fact is that the people here in the north of Ireland voted against Brexit. They voted to remain. And that decided view of the people must be respected. it is unconscionable and unthinkable that the north of Ireland would be coerced against the democratic will of the people out of the European Union, and that we would have a small island at once inside and outside of the European Union. The Irish government has a very clear responsibility to defend that vote, that democratic decision, and to act in the best interests of the people of all of Ireland. The Taoiseach in particular has a responsibility to defend the Good Friday Agreement and to ensure that EU citizens, Irish citizens, British citizens living in the north continue to have their EU rights protected post-Brexit. Designated special status for the north to remain inside the European Union will ensure that Ireland is treated as a single entity, and that is the better for all of us. And by the way, that call for special designated status inside the European Union is gaining momentum right across the continent. This status means no land border. It means no border, not how you manage a border. It means the absence of a border on our island. It means the north remaining with the rest of us inside the customs union, inside the single market, not as a transitionary phenomenon, but forever, in perpetuity, with ourselves. And in the event that the Tories are unable or unwilling to secure that kind of agreement for Britain, nonetheless, it is that type of agreement that must be struck and delivered for Ireland, North and South. So a land border, as it's discussed, doesn't just raise the prospects and the challenges, unacceptable challenges that might be presented by the reinstatement of custom checks or tariffs. As people in this room, I'm sure, understand, the cost of administering a border, whether it's visible or invisible, whatever the technology, ultimately passes on to citizens, to consumers, and to business, and that is simply not acceptable. About 21% of the North's exports go to Britain, and it is up to Theresa May to spell out how free trade between the island of Ireland and the island of Britain can be maintained. That is a challenge for them. I await and we await to hear their views and proposals on that. Truth is that even in achieving the special status, economic success will still be significantly stifled, and our island's potential, particularly the North's potential, will not be unleashed while the country remains partitioned. Border counties will continue to suffer from the volatility that comes with fluctuating currencies, a lack of inward investment, and infrastructural deficits. That's why, in my view, Brexit and the United Ireland debate are now fundamentally intertwined. Those who argue an opposing view have their heads in the sand, I think. I believe that the die has been cast, and none of us have the luxury to shirk the challenging debates ahead. And when I say none of us, I don't mean just those of us from a Republican or nationalist perspective, I mean unionist leaders also. I think Brexit has re-energised, reshaped, redefined in many ways the debate about a united Ireland. In the South, as it's called, we in Sinn Féin have sought the support of all parties in the Oireachtas for a committee on Irish unity. We will be bringing forward a white paper on Irish unity. I understand that other political parties are similarly working on such papers. And we want to see a referendum on unity, a border poll, in the next 5 years. We believe that is achievable. We also believe that it is winnable. And we believe, and we have said this to Leo Varadkar and to the Dublin government, that we believe this should be government policy. For our part, in that context, we want to progress a debate that delivers for all the people living on the island, whether it's in terms of taxation, investment in infrastructure, or the delivery of public services. We want a new Ireland that delivers unity, prosperity, and fair play. Those are the watchwords. In 2015, and Kevin has referred to this, Professor Hubner of Vancouver University produced a detailed modelling document that projected the total combined Irish economy would, in a short number of years, be greater than the two separate economies, North and South, by approximately €35 billion over a number of years. Dr. Hubner's study obviously requires revision and advancement, and I really hope that academics and analysts will take up the challenge to actually look to the future and imagine a united, integrated future and the real economic dividends that it can offer for all of us. A recent Intertrade Ireland and ESRI report demonstrated the extent to which the island is already integrated economically and politically. All Ireland trade in goods was valued at €2.7 billion in 2016, south to north at about 1.65 billion, north to south at just over 1 billion. Almost 2,000 different categories of products are traded north to south. In excess of 2,000 different categories of products are traded north to south. So as a result of the Good Friday Agreement and the progress that has been made, a large number of bodies and organisations already work successfully on an all-Ireland basis, whether it's Intertrade's work with SMEs, whether you look to Tourism Ireland, the Northwest Cancer Centre at Altnagelvin, Ceoltas Ceoltóirí Éireann, or the North-South Ministerial Council, and they work to the benefit, I think we can agree, of all of the island in a non-partisan and in an inclusive way. But there are still very significant challenges for business, for industry and for farming. Different tax, legal and currency regimes operating across the island create unnecessary administrative cost and burden for business, hindering growth and the potential of the island. Imagine what we could achieve with the single All-Ireland Jobs and Investment Agency, combining the current efforts of the IDA, of InvestNI and Intertrade Ireland. Imagine that. How attractive would a United Ireland package be for multinationals looking to establish new bases or grow existing investments in what is a bilingual but also an English-speaking base with full and unfettered access to the single market? We need to look at that and we need to plan for that. Professor Hubner noted in his report that attracting foreign direct investment is not only about implementing a competitive tax rate, but also, and in many ways more importantly, it's about restructuring an entire policy framework to attract and to feed high value-added enterprises. FDI can play an important role in developing supply chain linkages for micro and small domestic enterprises, increasing knowledge transfer and productivity. Those must be our goals. Harmonising tax and legal structures for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, which are, let's face it, the lifeblood of the Irish economy, north and south. Removing the unpredictability of currency fluctuations will enable business to expand the client base. The farming sector, and I know we're in a city location, but let's just remember that it in particular has been stymied with issues between two jurisdictions in tagging systems, animal health regulations, and so on. But post-Brexit and in a united Ireland, more importantly, the agri-food sector can grow in a unified, a logical and a coherent way. I want to very briefly say something about at this juncture, about the institutions. And I'm sure in the room, a sense of perhaps impatience or questioning as to what might happen next and when the political system might go live again in terms of the executive and the institutions. And I want to make very clear to this audience that we are absolutely resolved and determined to ensure that the executive and all of the political institutions are reinstated at the earliest possible opportunity. These are shared democratic platforms which we value. They are platforms that serve all of our people. And if anyone is despondent in the audience, there is no need for or call for despondency. We are now at a decisive moment, a moment where political leaderships must lead from the front. And that means re-establishing the institutions on the basis of respect, inclusivity, credible, clean institutions that can deliver. That's what we want. That is what we are determined to achieve. The Good Friday Agreement and the peace process itself provide our Ireland with the mechanism to achieve Irish unity. It's set out for us there. Our cross-border relationships are already in place, and there is already implicitly an acknowledgement of not just a shared past, but indeed a shared future. Irish unity opens up big questions beyond those that we'll discuss here today. Families, like enterprise and educators, will have practical questions regarding the nuts and bolts of how unification will look. We know that unity is possible. We know in reality that we're already on the pathway towards it. We only have to look to the successful reunification of Germany to see that with political will, and of course with the support of the people, our ambition for Ireland can be realised. It's for the Irish government to accept that the best protection for the island of Ireland in any post-Brexit arrangement is for the North to secure that designated status that I've described, and for us to plough on and plan on for a new united Ireland. I want to mention, and before I finish, a number of other matters that pertain to business and that need to be secured. And despite the talk of the role of an executive when it's re-established in managing or deciding issues around Brexit, there is a reality that a lot of the heavy lifting will have to be done by Dublin and by the Irish government, because they will be at the negotiating table and they have a responsibility for the country as a whole. So let me just flag up some of the things that we believe they need to argue for. They need to look for a relaxing of some of the EU state aid rules. They need to look to leveraging structural funds to buffer the impact of Brexit North and South. They need to ensure that the EU's strategic infrastructure plans don't exclude the all-island economy. We believe that they need to look to extend the scope of the Globalisation Fund to support workers who will be affected by Brexit. We believe that we need a new Brexit Solidarity Fund for investment and diversification programmes in sectors and regions that will be impacted. And as I've said earlier, we've also called on them to start planning now in real terms and in a very inclusive and open way, setting out the plans for Irish unity. EU leaders, we had Guy Verhofstadt in the Dáil yesterday, Michel Barnier and all others, have committed to protecting Ireland's interests. They've guaranteed that the North can and will rejoin, if forced out, the EU as part of a united Ireland. I have been heartened by the extent to which and the level of understanding right across the European Union of the Irish question. And when you watch the European system very stubbornly insist that no further issues will be advanced until the money, issues around citizens and the Irish question are resolved, I think that is a reflection back at us, the depth of understanding that there is. So, the debate not just on Brexit but on Irish unity, what a united Ireland will look like, is happening as we speak in real time. And I want to thank again Jerry and Sean and all of you for being here, because this morning I think is an opportunity for us not just to deal with the dilemma and the challenges of Brexit, but to share and to help form each other's and our collective vision for a united, a new, inclusive and prosperous Ireland. So, Shin Maméid agus Gurimila Mahagwith Galer.